Look, we hear a lot, a lot, about algorithms, neural networks, and massive compute power. It feels like every single day there's some flashy new headline about, how many billions of parameters a new model has, or how incredibly fast the newest GPU cluster can crunch numbers. But what actually drives a true AI breakthrough? Like, what really separates a system that just confidently hallucinates from one you'd literally trust with your life? Well, beneath all the hype and beneath all the shiny hardware, it really boils down to one absolute bedrock concept, the foundation of verifiable intelligence, and that is exactly what we're going to unpack in today's explaining.
Every breakthrough starts with a foundation. I know, it sounds so incredibly simple, almost like common sense, right? But it is the absolute truth of engineering. Whether you're building a massive physical skyscraper right in the middle of a bustling city, or you're engineering this highly complex digital mind in a server farm somewhere, you just cannot build high if your base is weak. The structural integrity of the entire system, no matter how wildly ambitious your final design might be, relies entirely on those very first building blocks you lay down. You could hire the literal best architects on the planet, but if they're building on a swamp, yeah, that building is going to sink.
And this brilliantly illustrates the fundamental divide in how we actually build that base. Think about human development for a second. Our foundation is knowledge. We build our understanding of the world through learned experiences, structured education, verified facts. A kid learns a stove is hot, and boom, that becomes foundational knowledge they carry for the rest of their life. But for AI, that foundation is purely data. It's the oxygen, the very soil that machine intelligence grows from. And AI doesn't have a gut feeling. It doesn't have lived experience. Its entire capability to reason is built exclusively on its data diet. If human reasoning is built on accumulated knowledge, AI reasoning is built entirely on what it consumes.
Okay, let's dive into this reality check, because here is where the real problem starts. Most data, it isn't born useful, not even close. Raw data is inherently flawed. Just look at how it breaks down here. First, it's fragmented. It's kind of like trying to read a critical financial spreadsheet from 2014, but half the cells are totally blank, and the rest are in a language you don't speak. Second, it's unstructured, just completely lacking any organization. Third, it's notoriously difficult to verify, meaning we usually have absolutely zero idea where the information actually came from. And finally, it's missing context. That's literally like reading only the middle chapter of a mystery novel and trying to guess the ending. Imagine trying to build that skyscraper we just talked about, but your bricks are shattered and your cement is basically quicksand. That is the actual state of most raw data today.
So, that brings us to the massive elephant in the room. Why in the world do we expect models trained on flawed data to actually be reliable? It's this profound, honestly almost comical paradox in the tech world right now. We are feeding these incredibly sophisticated machine learning models terabytes of fragmented, contextless, completely unverified garbage, and then we expect them to magically spit out flawless logic and absolute truth? We want them to write perfect code, diagnose complex diseases, drive our cars down the highway, all while fueling them with the digital equivalent of junk food. It is completely absurd to expect a sturdy, reliable outcome when your building materials are fundamentally compromised from the start.
But here's the good news. A massive paradigm shift is absolutely underway. Codatta is building toward a radically different approach. We're talking about a complete architectural overhaul and a brand new standard for how we gather, process, and use the data that feeds AI. We are finally moving away from that old reckless habit of just scraping whatever fractured data we can find on the web and crossing our fingers that the algorithm figures it out. Codatta's framework essentially forces developers to rethink the entire pipeline. It changes our fundamental relationship with AI's core building blocks so we can finally solve that paradox of unreliability.
Now, what's really interesting about this new approach is this simple but incredibly powerful concept, the verifiable asset. See, in this paradigm, data is no longer treated as just some cheap, disposable input, the kind you burn through once to train a model and then instantly forget about. Instead, it gets elevated. It becomes a structured, traceable, permanent resource. Think of it as a high-value, persistent structural beam. Just imagine the difference between an AI trained on millions of random anonymous internet comments versus one trained on definitively sourced, peer-reviewed medical journals. The first one gives you a totally unpredictable, hallucinating machine. The second gives you an expert system you can actually trust. That massive shift in reliability only happens when you start treating your underlying data as a permanent, verifiable asset.
And a truly reliable data asset operates on what we can call the rule of 4. It's a complete, whole entity made up of 4 equal pillars: structured contributions, traceable provenance, persistent attribution, and measurable quality. Now, the absolutely crucial concept to grasp here is interdependence. They rely on each other. If you remove even one of these, let's say you have perfectly structured data, the quality is measurable, but you have absolutely no clue who authored it, so you lack that traceable provenance. The integrity of the AI trained on it is fundamentally compromised. You wouldn't build a massive suspension bridge if it was missing a primary support cable, right? Well, you simply cannot build verifiable intelligence missing even one of these core data attributes.
Let's actually walk through how this builds, because you can basically consider this your definitive checklist for creating robust AI building blocks. Step 1. Structured contributions. The data has got to be organized and labeled properly from the exact moment it's created, not just cleaned up later as some super expensive afterthought. Step 2. Traceable provenance. We absolutely must know the exact origin. Like, was this piece of code written by a senior developer, or was it just generated by a random bot? Step 3. Persistent attribution. Credit and lineage have to stay attached to that data forever, creating a fully transparent history of how it evolved. And finally, Step 4. Measurable quality. You don't just guess that the data is good. You mathematically prove that it meets exact standards before it ever even touches a neural network. Following these exact steps sequentially is how you transform unreliable quicksand into absolute bedrock.
You know, very often people assume that if you have a mediocre AI model, it just needs better coding, or maybe a larger context window, or just a more complex design to suddenly become great. But that mindset relies purely on architecture. Companies will literally spend millions of dollars on the absolute latest hardware and the most complex neural networks you can imagine, while completely ignoring their data pipeline. But the reality is, an exceptional model relies entirely on the quality of its learned data. The true game changer isn't the complex design of the AI itself, it's the structural integrity of its foundation. Because the most elegant, highly advanced algorithm in the world, if it's trained on fragmented garbage, is just going to produce highly efficient fragmented garbage.
So the crucial takeaway absolutely boils down to this. It's the quality of what the model learns from. Every single piece of predictive text you type out, every generated image you see online, every automated medical diagnosis or complex financial forecast, it is exactly as strong as the data it consumed, period. When we finally stop treating data like disposable trash, and we actually elevate it to a verifiable asset with structure, provenance, attribution, and measurable quality, we literally elevate the intelligence of the machine itself. We move out of this risky era of artificial guesswork, and we finally step into an era of verifiable truth.
Which leaves us with one really essential question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. What is the foundation of the AI tools that you rely on every single day? Next time you use your smart assistant, or pull up an enterprise analytics dashboard, or type a prompt into a generative platform, just ask yourself, was this built on unverified quicksand, or was it built on permanent, verifiable assets? Because understanding this hidden architecture behind the intelligence we use, it really isn't just some niche technical exercise for developers anymore. It's absolutely essential for all of us as we navigate this new digital landscape. Thanks so much for joining me, and remember, keep questioning the foundation.